When you hear the name Flint, Michigan, what pops up? The water crisis. Everyone might not know exactly what's going on with Flint's water crisis, but everyone knows there's something going on with their water. In 1897, Flint, Michigan passed a bill requiring lead pipes to be used. Anywhere where water flows should be used with lead pipes. Lead pipes are not safe and can cause lead poisoning, which thousands of residents still have in their homes. Flint officials wanted to join Criminology Water Authority, who declined. So Flint decided to use water from the Flint River in 2013. In 2014, Brian Larkin, the Associate Director of the Governor's Office of Urban and Metropolitan Initiatives, warned Flint to not use the water as a water source. And within the next few weeks, Flint residents started complaining about taste, color, and odor in their water, which started a big problem. After the residents started to complain and worry about their water, Flint decided to switch to the Detroit's water system in 2015, and then a federal emergency was declared in January 2016. Since Flint's water was switched to Detroit's water system, it wasn't treated properly to prevent lead from contaminating the water. The public health wasn't concerned about the safety of their residents, which resulted in the lead levels in Flint's tap water to increase above the action level of 15 ppb. The public health wasn't concerned about the childhood lead exposure also. Lead exposure within the childhood can cause damage to the nervous system and brain. Damage to these areas can slow the growth in children and cause them to have behavior and learning problems. In adults, lead exposure can cause heart disease, kidney diseases, and high blood pressure, all things the public health didn't put into perspective. Flint started experiencing a decrease in the population because of the closure of automobile production facilities and middle-class residents moving because of the water crisis. In 2000, Flint had roughly 130 residents staying there, but in 2019, they have roughly 95,000. Because of the residents leaving, there are less people to pay income taxes and property taxes, which resulted in business closing. Leanne Walters is the resident of Flint and who people call Hero Mom. At a meeting with public officials, she held up a bottle filled with water that went through a filter and came out of her tap. She complained that she was paying amongst the highest water rates in the world, which is what Flint residents pay for their water because there are few people left in town for water that looked like rust soup. In 1995, Michigan State University did an annual survey that showed water infrastructure was not a concern of Michigan residents. But in 2015, after the water crisis, 32.5% of Michigan residents listed it as their number one concern above jobs and the economy. Flint state officials was well aware of the poor state of the city's water system prior to the water crisis, but were unable to act due to the financial challenges of residents leaving. The residents leaving was not only because of the water crisis, but also because of the lack of trust with their government. The city of Flint updated its master plan and won an award for its public outreach efforts, in part because of 5,000 residents participated in planning. But in May 2017, the city had an 18-day public comment period about which water source it should use, and only 4 residents participated, which could be a result of the lack of trust within their government. Trust in the government is dependent upon residents' perceptions that the government is physically responsible and gives public services effectively and efficiently. Flint residents' trust was already low due to the problems that predated the crisis by years, such as the city's loss of major employers and declining service quality. The water crisis within itself is a valid example of the failures of the government actions, which is environmentally injustice. According to Campbell, lead can cause immediate acute poisoning, but the subacute, moderate, long-term exposure impact of concern in Flint is more common and much more insidious. Any resulting behavioral disturbance of loss of intellectual function will probably not have been linked by their physicians or families to lead poisoning, and instead accepted as something that just occurred. Additionally, the adverse effects from this event may take years to surface, as most negative health effects from low-level lead exposure develop slowly. Hypertension and kidney damage may not present until long after the exposure. Any resulting behavior disturbance or loss of intellectual function would probably not have been linked by their physicians or families to lead poisoning, and instead accepted again as something that had just occurred. Dr. Mona Hanna Echia performed a study looking at the blood lead levels from Flint children from 2013 to 2015 by referring to the CDC level of 5 micrograms deciliters. Her study showed that the level of increased blood lead levels in a group of Flint children almost doubled between levels and tripled within the children who lived in areas with the highest water lead levels. According to Piper, the Virginia Tech Flint Water Study Team, citizen scientists of Flint, and supporting groups including American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan started an independent water lead investigation in August 2015. Preliminary results of this random sampling in terms of known service line material per LCR high-risk sampling criteria indicated a serious system-wide lead contamination event. Each water lead kit prepared at Virginia Tech, including sampling instructions and 3 sampling bottles. In addition, a demonstration video of the sampling protocol was made available. After a minimum of 6 hours of stagnation, residents were instructed to choose one drinking water tap to collect 1 liter of cold water at a normal flow so residents can have a way to test their own water. Flint then took the initiative to have the children take a blood lead level screening, since most lead-exposed children are asymptomatic. Symptoms of having high lead levels are vague and nonspecific, including fatigue. In states that have lead programs funded by the CDC, all Medicaid-enrolled children are required to have blood levels taken at 1 and 2 years old. The American Academy of Pediatrics are also recommending obtaining blood lead levels of at-risk children, those who live in high-risk zip codes, and all foreign-born children, who should be screened immediately upon arrival to the United States and then again 3 to 6 months later. According to Rowe, Flint explored the novel hypothesis that routine monthly analysis of metal mass in biosolids at the Flint wastewater treatment plant represents a composite sampling tracking the mass of metal released from plumbing to the Flint water distribution system. Metals, including lead, in civil wastewater are often dominated by release from potable water plumbing, and a majority of lead in wastewater is typically removed during treatment and concentrated in the biosolids. Levels of permissive plumbing-related metals in Flint's monthly biosolids were correlated before, during, and post-Flint water crisis. All 5 metals spiked markedly in the summer of 2014 when there was no corrosion control during the Flint water crisis, and it is hypothetically possible this is due to general discard of pre-existing scale from all plumbing surfaces. In conclusion, the residents of the city of Flint, Michigan began to use water from Flint River to save money by terminating a contract with Detroit's water system. A high level of lead was then discovered in Flint's tap water, where Dr. Mona and her team conducted a review of blood lead levels for children under 5 years before 2013 and after 2015. Lead, which is a dangerous toxin, is the main target for the nervous system in adults and children of lead toxicity. Although 99% of the lead taken into an adult's body would come out through waste in a couple of weeks, only roughly 32% of the lead taken into children's body would come out through waste. People drinking the contaminated water would never have known they had evaluated and elevated blood lead levels without specific medical testing for blood lead levels. In fact, if the water contamination had not been made public, most exposed children and their families would have never suspected they were being exposed over a 20-month period of time, and it would be expected that the water contamination and lead exposures would have continued up until today.